What happened was the very first night, and this is the closest I ever got to being fired.
Oh, God. Hello and welcome back to the Haunt Line, the show dedicated to SoCal haunts and events. Today we've got a very exciting episode for you. Joining us is former CarnEVIL Clown who had a great time performing at Knott Scary Farm, and we're going to hear all about it. Please welcome to the show, Dustin Willis. Dustin, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. I am super stoked to hear all about your time at CarnEVIL. But before we get into that, I know that like a lot of other haunters out there, your time as a haunter started at a home haunt. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, man. So I actually started scaring at age 6 or 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So fun fact, I'd never been trick-or-treating up until I was about 18. Actually, the first time I ever went out and like got candy kind of thing.
Wow. All right.
Up until that, I had worked a home haunt. My uncle ran a pretty popular, we had like 400 or 500 people go through that thing. And I mean, for a one night, in the neighborhood kind of situation, it was fun. But yeah, I was so little, I could fit inside. We had like a life-size coffin that I could fit inside. And so like I just pop out of that, or they'd put me in a hole in the ground and I'd pop out of that. But it's a lot of fun, and it was a really great way to kind of get your bearings. And I knew right away, like, oh, this is dope. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to entertain, and I want to see the scares and the laughter and everything. It's great.
So how did you end up performing at Knott's then?
It's actually kind of interesting. It ties into the home haunt thing. So my uncle that I mentioned, he had ran this thing for a very long time, and then he was in a really serious motorcycle accident, and so he couldn't do the maze anymore.
Wow.
And so I had nothing to do on Halloween for a solid 3 or 4 years. That happened when I was about 16 or so, and I was depressed. I hated Halloween. It was my favorite month. October was just amazing. All the cool sports are happening, and Halloween's happening, and like the weather's perfect. It's just something about it. And I hated it. And I knew that I couldn't keep going on hating October and hating Halloween. So I wanted to make a new tradition. And I ended up in 2010, I met somebody in my English class in college who was like, oh yeah, I work at Knott Scary Farm. You should just come through and be a guest. I'm like, you know what? Let's start a new tradition. Let's make it happen. So I went with a bunch of friends, and I walked through the gates, and the very first thing I saw was a gentleman by the name of Tank. I would later learn Tank was this guy. He had a big old thunder jug and scared the crap out of this girl, and she just dropped to the ground. And I realized at that moment that A, I'm going to have a really bad time tonight because I don't like being scared. But B, I'm on the wrong side of the mask. Like, I'm in the right event, but I'm on the wrong side of it. And so I need to do anything I can to be a part of this. And it was at that moment I decided, like, yeah, I'm going to work this event next year, or I'm going to work it this year. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make it happen. And that's kind of what happened.
Nice. We actually have a couple of fan questions. We had some people write in via Instagram. So my first question for you comes from @official_king74. And he asks, what's it like to audition to become a haunt monster? So tell us about your audition process.
Oh, man. So my audition process is much different from what your audition process potentially could be. I joined in 2011. And in 2011, we still had the Campout. And so I'm just gonna talk for a small moment of what this was like, because it sucked. People were like, well, I missed the Campout. No, you don't. You don't miss the Campout. The Campout's crazy. So you would Knott's would allow you to line up in the parking lot at midnight the night before auditions. And so it was your job to get there and just rush and get in line. And the farther up you are, the better chance you have at making it into one of these zones or one of these mazes that are really, really popular, right? Because you got to imagine the first things to go are, street positions and specialty maze positions, speaking roles, things like that. Anyways, for my particular situation, it involved me being awake for more than 24 hours, spending the entire night in a cold parking lot, and then at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning when all the guys walk in, it's time to audition. So specifically, I think the thing that hasn't changed for auditions is really the expectations. So with Knott, it's interesting. You're a lot more of a performer. I think you get a little bit more leeway. I've talked to a lot of Horror Nights guys about this, and they're very scripted. Like they're perfected and scripted, and it makes a lot of sense for where they're at. Knott's is like, this is the idea I have. What do you think of it? And Knott's either accepts or denies it. But either way, the first thing they always want to see is your improv ability. They'll give you some crazy off the wall situation to act out. It can be like you're the devil barista at Starbucks and like the coffee's cold, go. And just, can you think on your feet? Because honestly, 80% of Knott's, being on street, it's thinking on your feet. And that goes with anywhere, but it is a lot of that work. But after that, depending on where you want to go, you want to have a character ready to pitch it. And not just a character, but like a unique character, one that really identifies with you, because you're going to be stuck with a stupid character for your entire career. If you pick something generic, you're not going to like it. So pick something that's unique to you, and something that maybe they've never seen before, right? Like blow them away. And that's the advice that I was given. It worked. I ended up being a multi-personality clown, so I kind of got to do whatever I want. Such a cop-out, by the way, to be a multi-personality character, because it's whatever I'm feeling any night I can just pop in. But no, I really loved that character, and it was a little bit, he was very naive and got into a lot of trouble, and I think that was a lot of fun. So yeah, when you present a character that you're passionate about, the judges and the people who are there, the designers and the people who are watching you, they're more into it for sure.
I like it. And, I will say, I'll speak to that, to the fact that Horror Nights does seem to be like their characters, their mazes seem to be stuck in a time loop, if you will, where, Michael Myers comes out, he raises his knife, and then he goes back through the door that he just came out of, and it, rinse and repeat. Whereas at Knott's, every time you step into one of those mazes, you never know what's going to happen. You know that there might be a performer in the room, but you don't know what they're going to do. And to me, that's what makes it even more terrifying, because you can walk through the day after you just went and get a completely different experience. So I do love that. We also have another question for you from at Mr. Scary Dre. What does it take to be a performer?
Ooh, man. What does it take to be a performer? It takes a lot of patience, I think. You really don't start honing in on your craft until week 2 or 3 maybe of the run. So a lot of people do get frustrated in the very beginning. It's a lot harder than they thought it was, or the nights are a little bit more cruel, that the guests are more cruel than they thought that they were initially. It suddenly doesn't become fun, and it just takes a lot of patience, a lot of optimism, and it takes a lot of energy. Depending on, you'll talk to 100 different monsters, you'll get 100 different responses on how each one prepares for the haunt season. I know guys that smoke 2 packs a day and outrun me. And dang. I was training since March, and still, it's crazy. So I think depending on how you prepare, it's going to really make a difference for your journey there. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Now let's talk about sliding. How long were you sliding, and were you sliding before your time at Knott's even?
Yeah, I slid a little bit at the maze. But mind you, this is 10-year-old Dustin with old knee pads. I was falling, really, is what I was doing. Just kind of collapsing in front of people. But I wasn't sliding at the capacity that you would at Knott's until my first year going into my second year. That's when, if you look at pictures of me from 2011 to 2012, I lost about 10% of myself. I lost a lot of weight. And so I wasn't able to do what I was able to do in 2012 and 2011. So I started sliding. I got really serious about it between 2011 and 2012.
Nice. So, how long did it take for you to get comfortable, would you say? In terms of months or in practice, how long until you were 100% comfortable? I
would say it took, for me, I would start practicing in March. And I would start, doing some cardio and running and sliding maybe once a week. And then once it hit April or May, I'm going twice a week. And then August, I'm going maybe 4 times a week. And so all that combined, I would say after 100 hours of sliding, you start to feel pretty good.
Right.
I would say my third year of Knott's, which was the second year for me sliding, that's when I was like, I was automatic. I couldn't hit somebody if I tried. Like I was pretty much like in the zone feeling it. But you know, it's easy to be a good slider on an empty court. It's another thing to read lines and to read people and to know when to bail and like all that stuff. I'm proud to say I've never hit anybody. I've never hit a guest in the 3 years that I was sliding. So, you know, not that I know of anyway.
So I know a lot of people are interested in sliding. Do you have any words of advice, any tips for people that are wanting to start out?
Yeah, I think sliding is an interesting art form, right? I mean, it's very
truly,
much,
it really is. Yeah,
it's very much. I relate it to something like Cirque du Soleil, right? People are like, "Oh, they're performers." Like, yeah, they're performers, but they're also athletes. Like these guys take care of their bodies and they take care of their minds and everything when they go into it. So, for me personally, when I was sliding, I treated myself as an athlete, and so you know, a lot of stretching, a lot of patience. You're not going to be great immediately, right? It's going to take a lot of time. So you don't expect going out there and just jumping 8 people. Like you have to work your way up to stuff like that. I couldn't get any farther than an inch off the ground for at least the first year. Like I have no idea what happened. And then something changed. And I was just like, oh, I can jump now. It was really strange. So I think, again, it comes back to the what kind of monster do you want to be, right? Like you can be a technical slider and they're super effective. Maybe you can't jump over 10 people, but you know what? If you can hit those lines and you practice, you know, how hard you hit and how fast you get into a slide and pop up, like that's such an effective slider. I think I would take that person anytime.
Nice. I love it, man. So let's talk about your costume, which, by the way, I see there's a little something behind you there.
My room doesn't always look like this, by the way. This is my editing bay. This isn't always up, right? Like this is, but I just my wife sews and does costuming, and I just figured I'd throw it up there. So people were like, "Oh, I think I know which monster he was." Like, I wasn't very popular.
So we've got another fan question from @Sickle66. Who asks, how long does it take to get into costume?
Oh, depending on who you are on streets or in a maze for that matter, it could take anywhere between, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to and half an hour, even longer. Makeup, when I was there, makeup had 30 minutes. So I think it was 2D makeup had, I think it was 15 minutes. I'm sure someone's going to comment like, he's wrong. But whatever, man. I mean, close. I think it's 15 minutes, I think, for 2D. And then it was 30 minutes for prosthetic makeup. And obviously with the costume, depending on how many pieces you had, that can take another 20 minutes. Everyone has their own routine. Because getting into costume is one thing, getting into a character is a completely different thing. I mean, it took me probably a total of 45 minutes to get fully ready and into character, maybe even an hour. I even had a buddy of mine who he had a bunch of belts on him. And so it took him like 20 or 30 minutes just to get in a costume because he had to like lace up everything and then he had to get his makeup done. So yeah, about 30 minutes for makeup and everything else is whatever it has to be for you.
Nice. Now, it definitely seems like you guys get a lot of say in your costuming. Is that accurate?
It is. Again, it's up to us to present a really cool, a really solidified idea to the head wardrobe, and then it's up to them to approve it. I've gotten a lot of things approved, few things denied, but if you know what you're doing, you know what you're going to get denied. And the goal is to get those other things approved. Costumes are different. It's really, if you notice, everyone has a color scheme, right? So like if you look at Ghost Town, they're very dark. They have the cheesecloth like cobwebs, and I think their color palettes are a little bit different. CarnEVIL, the color palette's pretty basic, right? It's a lot of browns, a lot of light browns, tans, whites. We had some accents of red here and there, but no black. No black, no blood was a big thing of CarnEVIL. And some people really hated it. They're like, why can't we be scary clowns? And why do we look like we're wearing potato sacks? And like, all those things are true. But listen, man, give credit where credit is due. No one sees us coming. We blend in with the cement. It's the weirdest thing. Like I can stand in front of somebody and then they're like, oh my gosh, like how does that happen? It's the costuming. So the rules are there for a reason, to keep you blended and to keep everything going. So yeah, but we have pretty good leeway. The props is a different story though.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, you both worked in a mask and in costume. We actually have another fan question from, this is kind of funky, at fxn.eral, so funeral, essentially with an X. They want to know about the makeup and costuming process, but specifically in your instance, what's it like working with a mask versus working with makeup?
My experience was unique because everyone starts in a mask. I was lucky enough to start in a mask, work majority of my career in makeup, and then end my career in a mask. And
okay.
I kind of like the mask more because
really,
yeah, it's really weird when you're in prosthetic makeup. I mean, you're in that thing for 8 hours, so you're going on lunch. You can't eat certain things. I had teeth that like stuck out 6 inches from my face. I could only eat French fries and like chicken nuggets. Like I couldn't eat a salad if I wanted to because the fork and like I get it all over my face. So it just really depends. But also with a mask, you'll notice with Knotts, a lot of people in masks, their masks are very well fitted to their faces. So we all typically go to, there's like a handful of people in Southern California that do custom masks. And so we'll go and spend hundreds of dollars on these masks and fit them and form them to our faces so that any movement, if like, when it gets going, like when you start sweating and the mask is sticking to your face, any little nuance, like if I'm squinting, my mask will pinch, it'll talk. And it's really, it's for a couple reasons. Number one, it's so that I can breathe and I can kind of move around and do things. But it's also a safety thing. If you're a slider, you want to have your peripherals completely open so you can kind of see everything. With that said, the process of makeup, if it's a prosthetic, we received a new prosthetic every 3 nights.
Wow.
So you would have the same face for 3 nights, same paint scheme for 3 nights. And the makeup artists who, they're fantastic. They had a pretty good leeway of like what they wanted to do. So you're kind of it was so exciting walking in and being like, okay, what'd they come up with this week? And they're like, oh, you have a rat coming out of your forehead. Like, all right, like, this is going to be cool. So usually it's already pre-painted. They're just blending it, blend. And then you're out there and going.
I love it, man. That's so cool. All right, so now we have another fan question for you. I think it's safe to say that working as a haunt performer, you get to see all kinds of reactions from people. They all react very differently from each other. At Real Tyler Aish, sorry if I screwed that up, wants to know, what are some of your favorite scares?
Oh, man. There's so many to just go through. Right. I have a few. There's a few that kind of stick out to me that are particularly favorite scares. There are some things, I guess I can say this now because I don't work there anymore. There's some things that I did that you can't necessarily do, but I did, and they're a lot of fun. I remember by the way, if you're a guest, right, or if you're somebody who likes to visit these haunts over and over again, as a monster, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm just going to speak for everybody for a moment because I think I've given myself that right. Our favorite guest is the one that's having fun. Those are the best. Those are the absolute best, and they're having a great time, and they're smiling, laughing with their friends. And so I have like just a blur of those particular scares of just people laughing and having a great time, shoving their friends in front of you, whatever. But one that sticks out to me, I'll give you 2. So this is really quick. My dad was at Dippin' Dots over by Supreme Scream, and he just got his fresh cup of Dippin' Dots, and I saw him, and I hit the ground so hard, and I scared the crap out of him, and his Dippin' Dots went flying, and he dropped them all over the ground. Oh, no! And it was so funny. And those are like $5. Like, that's not a joke. And, man, that was so funny. Like, I don't know, man. That was just one of the greatest. But I'll share one more with you, and I think this is the memory that I really pull with me, I think, from my entire career. This is one of my favorite moments. Again, something you're not supposed to do is go into stores. Oh my God. And I know it sounds like it's going in a place that it's not going in the direction you think. It was my last year, and it was a couple nights before Halloween, so we were almost done with the run. And I remember there was this father and like his daughter, who was probably 8 or 9, which Not Scary Farm is an event for 13 or older. So it's not up to me as a monster to choose whether or not I scare the kid, but rather how hard do I go, right? Like you have different levels of scaring, but like you paid for a ticket. So I have to go do it. But this girl, she'd had it. Like she's in tears. She's in the store. And I felt so bad for her. And I remember I was walking up and down, like past the store, like kind of looking at her. This is over by, I guess what is now Hang Time. In that store right there. And I remember she was so just spooked about it. And I looked at the attendant. I looked at the store attendant and I asked if I can come in. And so I did. And I sat down with her and I took off my gloves. And so the only thing you can see of me really is my neck. That's the only like human element. Everything else is covered. And so my hands are very human. There's no makeup on them. I wear gloves. And so she kind of calmed down. And I remember telling her a story of like, hey, like, we're all just having a good time, like completely in character. And I told her my story of like how I'm this lost child at a carnival. And like, I was human once too. Like, I know what this is like. And the dad just kind of stepped back and like watched it. And so I told her, and with permission of dad, I was like, I'll walk you out of the carnival. Like we can walk out together and none of my friends are going to get you. And so she held my hand and I walked her all the way out of CarnEVIL. And there's just something about that moment because I think it's our job to entertain, but I never wanted to scar anybody from like coming back to the event, you know? And I don't know whatever happened to her. Maybe she came back the next year. Maybe she didn't. I don't know. But I really hope that, you know, that memory stuck with me. And I hope she did come back. I hope she loves Halloween. I hope that's the one thing she holds on to. Maybe she's a monster, right? Maybe she is like, why'd you audition? Well, because, you know, this monster, it was really cool to me, whatever. And 2011, I wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? But like at the end of my career, I was at a point where I knew I wasn't coming back the next year. And my whole mindset kind of changed about the event. And you're just there to have a good time. And that's one of my favorite, it's not really a scare, but I mean, that's one of my favorite moments for sure.
Yeah, that's super sweet, man. That's awesome. And, you know, honestly, I'm sure it is interactions like that brings people back. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then who knows, maybe now she's talked to her friends and now there's a whole group of them coming to Not Scary Farm every year.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your retirement. Talk to me about that, dude. Like, what was the moment where you decided, like, all right, well, I need to take a step back?
My retirement, there's 2 elements to this. One is the physicality of the event.
Sure.
And the other is just your life. I was in my mid-20s. And at the time, I was going back to school. And so October, so I was going back to school. And we didn't know if the following year, if I was going to be accepted into USC or not. I was going to go to USC for film. And the school is very competitive and it's very draining. And there's no way I can work Not Scary Farm and pull 60 to 80 hour weeks in school.
Right.
It's not going to happen. So I treated it like it was my last year. And then it did come to fruition. But basically, physically speaking, at that point, I had so many injuries that I couldn't come back from. There were several that, you know, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. I was hurt every night. But an injury is something that sticks with you. And I had, up to that point, I had a concussion. I had bone contusions. I had a torn ligament in my foot. I had sprained wrist, lost several nails, toenails, fingernails.
Oh my God.
And to this day, my knees pop. Like I walk up and downstairs and my knees pop. And just recently I had a double bone contusion in both my legs from running. Yeah. So it's something that sticks with you. And I felt like at that point, it's probably time to hang it up. I could keep working, but honestly, there's no reason. If I can't give 110%, if I can't be the monster that I want to be, I'm not going to give this like half-assed version of what my character truly was. So all those things ultimately led to my retirement. I think what I took away from it now, looking back on it, I think it's important to understand that every night is special and have fun with the event. There were a lot of times when I wasn't having fun. You know, there were times where I felt jaded or I felt like, you know, someone did me wrong. You know, I lost my makeup spot and like I was so mad and I went out with this irritation. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's just a fun event. It's just a moment to release some energy and have some fun with your friends and scare people. And it just like any job or just like anything, it's such a cool thing to say that you were a part of it. Even if it was just for 1 year, I can look back And to some degree, my legacy is still there. There's still props that are floating around that I created. I'm literally still there somewhere in the form of a cutout, which is another story we can get into. But there's, it's just so cool.
All right, so let's talk about this cutout because I remember seeing it on your Facebook and it just all over your social media. Tell us the story of the cutout.
So the cardboard cutout, it came from the fact that they banned photos at Knott's. They said, okay, monsters, you can no longer take photos with guests. You have to keep scaring, keep moving. And a lot of people were upset about it. So I said, I think I know a way around this. Can I take pictures of guests with me, but of me? And so that was the end of the conversation. And everyone's like, great one, Dustin. Well, a week later, I showed up and I had a 5-foot cutout of myself from night one in a pose. And I remember showing it to Tim, who's the costume, the head of costuming. And I said, this is a prop. And he looks at me and he's like, how are you going to scare with that? And I was like, well, I'm going to hide it in a bush and it's going to be a distraction. I'm going to pop out and get him. And he's like, okay, we'll see how it works. And I'm like, yeah, we will. And I never scared with it. What happened was the very first night, and this is the closest I ever got to being fired.
Oh God.
This was the 40th. This was the 40th year, and so we had the Haunt Museum, and a vet of 16 years or 20 years named Spaz, who's there. Spaz is a haunt classic, man. This he's everywhere or nowhere at the same time. And we formed a bond. He's a really, really cool dude. And he saw the cutout and he was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Like, how'd you do this, brother? And I'm like high-fiving him. And he's like, we gotta go do something with this. I'm like, we don't open for another 30 minutes. He's like, I don't care. And so we go out there and it's in between day ops and haunt. So they're still setting up. And so Spaz and I go out there with the cutout and we go into the Haunt Museum and he takes it and plants it behind the rope by Elvira. And he looks at the attendant person, and she's just kind of like, what's going on? And Spaz was like, this is going here. It's going to fit. It'll be perfect. And then, I took a picture with it. And then, we left. And that was it. And I told Spaz and one other person, I was like, hey, guys, so that was definitely $140. So if we can just make sure it doesn't leave the Haunt Museum, that would be great. So we had eyes on it all night. And I was like, this is great. This is so funny. People are going to think it belongs and whatever. And so 3 hours into scaring on CarnEVIL, I'm doing my thing. And I'll go to the railroad tracks and meet up with Ghost Town monsters. And they'll be like, hey, I saw your cutout. Hilarious. Whatever. And we leave. And I remember I went to the tracks one time and one of the monsters was like, dude, your cutout's missing.
Oh, man.
And I was like, oh, no, someone stole it. Right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And as I'm walking back, I'm scaring, making my way back to the break room, and our cast lead comes to me. He's like, Dustin. And when they use your name on streets, that's how you know you done messed up. Because you don't use regular names on streets. And he's like, Dustin. And so I walk over, and he's like, we need to go talk to Ian, who was Haunt 2, I think. Ian and Laura. And they're Haunt 1, Haunt 2, the head of Haunt. And I think Rafi, it was ridiculous. General managers. He's like, we need to go right now. They want to talk to you. Super. I'm like, God damn it. So we go back to the break room and I put some stuff. He's like, no, don't bother. We're just going to walk over there now. We'll grab your things after. And I was like,
oh, geez.
All right, this is serious. So now the cast lead and one of the other talent captains from our area is walking me through Ghost Town. And when I tell you, this felt like a death march. It was insane. Every monster in Ghost Town is stopping pre-scare and looking like, is that Dustin? Oh, no. Because you're getting held and walked through. And, of course, I don't look right because I got this big, dumb, goofy grin on my face. So I look like I'm just smiling walking through, but behind it, I'm just going, oh, shit. And so they walk me all the way back to management. We walk into management, and Ian is standing there with his arms folded, slicked hair. Dude is, intimidating as hell. Yeah. And he looks at me and goes, hey, so how's your night going? I'm like, it's pretty good. And he goes, we got word of some things that were happening in Ghost Town, and we need your help with something. I said, okay. And so he swings a door open into a boardroom. He's like, can you identify this? And there's my dumbass cutout on top of the table in the corner by itself. And I look at him and I'm like, I don't know who that is, but whoever it is, that's an asshole for sure. And Ian and I think Craig or so, whoever else is there stopped, and Ian was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been here 20 whatever years. I've never seen this before. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen here. Will you sign it and can we keep it?
Oh my God.
And at that point, I knew that I was not in trouble. And I was like, yes. Like, of all the dumb things I've ever done at Knott that get you that conversation of like, funny, but no, right? Like, this was the thing that pulled me into management and like had that conversation. So I politely declined and I said, no, I want to keep it through the rest of the season, but I'll give it to you guys after. And so for the rest of the season, man, that thing ended up everywhere. There's pictures of it behind, Haunt 2's car. It was in a maze at one point. It was back in the Haunt Museum. It was it was all over. And now to this day, I mean, last year I went to Haunt and somebody I had never met before, a cast leader, somebody, all black shirt, walks up to me and he's like, I think there's a cutout of you in my break room. I was like, oh, maybe. And so I'll still get pictures to this day of it. And I just love the fact that of all the injuries that I listed and the blood, sweat, and tears that I put into this event, the one fucking thing that people remember is this stupid cutout. But I love it, man. It's one of the dumber things I've done, but it's pretty great, man.
That's incredible. That's truly incredible, man. So be on the lookout for the cutout next time you guys go to Scary Farm, whenever the hell that may be at this point.
It's perfect for the pandemic. Just throw me out front, man.
There you go.
Take pictures of it. That's perfect.
Meet and greet, put some fog around it. We'll call it a day. There you go.
Dodger Stadium is doing it, right? They got cutouts everywhere. Why didn't they put my cutout in Angel Stadium? That would have been perfect.
There you go. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a blast. I loved hearing about all the antics, and there's a lot of great advice in here for scare actors or performers, monsters. So thank you for your time, brother. Is there anywhere that people can follow you online?
Oh, God. Yeah, there is. You can follow me on Instagram, which is Dustin Does Film, because I do, in fact, do film. And then I'm on Twitter as well, Dustin W Film.
I love it, man. Well, hey, dude, thanks again for coming on the show, brother. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Cool. And then, of course, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Hauntline. You can also visit us on the web at www.thehauntline.com. And you can also download our podcast wherever you download podcasts. And until the next time, thank you for calling The Hauntline.